In this lecture, we're going to cover the NgStyle and NgClass directives. By the end of this lecture, you're going to understand when and how to use the NgStyle directive to set an element's style. You're also going to understand when and how to use the NgClass directive to set an element's class. Now we'll start with NgStyle. The NgStyle directive lets you set a given DOM element's CSS properties. And one way to set styles is by using the NgStyle directive and assigning it an object literal. So for our example application, we've got a component called NgStyle example. We again are just rendering a list and we're looping through a set of people which have a name and a country. So I'm just going to add the NgStyle directive to our li tag. And because I want to pass something into the NgStyle directive, I want to bind into it, I'm going to wrap it with the input property binding syntax with the square brackets. And I'm going to pass it an object literal. And I'm passing it an object literal with a key of background color and a value of green. So then the NgStyle directive will set the background color of the li tag to green. Let's run the application. And there you can see it's working. It's now setting the background color to green. But NgStyle becomes much more useful when the value is dynamic. And the values in the object literal that we assign to NgStyle can actually be JavaScript expressions. And they are evaluated, and the result of that expression is used as the value of the CSS property. So instead of just assigning it to the string green, we can make this whole part here, this value, an actual JavaScript expression. So I'm going to use something called a ternary operator, which is like an if, a one-line if expression. So this is a ternary operator, which means if the person country is UK, then use green, else use red. And now if I run the application, there you can see for the people who are UK, it's setting the background color to green. But the expression doesn't even have to be in line. We can actually call a function on the component instead. So we're going to call a function getColor and pass it the person country. This function getColor needs to be on our component. So let's add it. And we use a switch statement. If it's UK, we return green. If it's USA, blue. And if it's HK, red. And I'm just actually missing a special bracket, curly bracket at the end. So now if we run this, now we can see that if it's UK, it's green, if it's USA, it's blue, and if it's Hong Kong, it's red. There's also an alternative syntax for setting styles. Instead of using the NgStyle directive, we can set individual style properties using the style.property syntax. And now if we rerun our application, we can see it's showing exactly the same result. And in fact, let me change it from background color to color, just so we can see the text easier. And there we go. But let's talk for a second about points and pixels. Let's imagine we wanted to set the font size to 24. Now we could use something like this. But this wouldn't work. It isn't actually valid CSS to just set the font size to the number 24. We also have to specify a unit such as pixels or EM. But Angular comes to the rescue with a special syntax, which is property.unit. So if we wanted to set the size to 24 pixels, we would write this. font-size.px. We could also use .am to express the font size in EMs, or even in percentage by using the percentage symbol. And this also works with the alternative syntax. So if we change this to style.fontSize, we then say .px, and we say that's equal to 24, and then we hit run. And there you go, now it's showing the font size as 24. And actually, I'm just going to get rid of color for now. Now, the NgClass directive allows us to set the CSS class dynamically for a DOM element. So there are two ways to use this directive. The first is by passing an object literal to the directive. Now for this one, I'm going to use another component which I've got at the bottom of the page. Now this component is NgClass example. So let's add that to our main directive. Our main component at the bottom. Now if I run this, that should be working. There we go, there's our NgClass at the top. Now I want to do something very, very similar to what we just did. I want to change the text color. And because we're using Twitter Bootstrap, we can change the text color with some classes called text success, text danger, etc. So very similar to NgStyle, we can set the class by using the NgClass directive. We want to input into this directive an object literal, so we use the input property binding syntax. And we're passing it an object literal with the key being the class we want to add. And the value being a condition or a Boolean value, or something that resolves into a Boolean value. So the keys to this object are classes that we want added to the element if the value evaluates to true. So in this example, since the value is true, this will set the class text success onto the element the directive is attached to, which is the li element. So if we run this, it's now setting all of the text to green, which is the purpose of the text success class. But again, just like anything else, the value can be a JavaScript expression. So let's expand on our NgClass directive to add the classes text success if the person is in the UK, primary if they're in the USA, or danger if they're in Hong Kong. Here we go. So if the person.country is UK, we add the text success class, USA, text primary, Hong Kong, text danger. So now if I run this, there we go. We're now saying multiple different colors depending on the country. So we use the NgClass directive if we want to set multiple classes, because an object literal can hold multiple keys. But there is an alternative shortcut syntax if we just want to set one class. We can just bind to class and pass it the name of the class that we want to add to the element. Now we're passing it a string, but this could also just be a function, and whatever the function returns is the name of the class that we're going to add to our element. So again, now all of our elements are green. This syntax has one big drawback in that if our li element had some other classes attached to it, like so, then using the class directive like so will replace all of these classes with just text success. So if we just want to add the class text success to the list of classes already set on the element, we can use the extended syntax class.className. And the thing on the right hand side is another JavaScript expression, which if true, will add the class. If false, will remove the class. Let's just set it to true for now. So now you can see it's adding the classes. It's still green. But if we inspect element, you can see the other classes are still there. It hasn't been replaced by the text success class. And just like before, we can have an expression as the value. So let's say If the person.country is equal to UK, use a class of text success. There we go. And then we can actually have multiple values on the same element, as long as each of the classes you want to add is different. So let's add multiple values. Like so. And there we go. So if the person country is UK, it's success. Primary is if they're from the USA, and danger is if they're from Hong Kong. So in summary, both the NgStyle and NgClass directives can be used to conditionally set the look and feel of your application. NgStyle gives you fine-grained control on individual properties, but if you want to make changes to multiple properties at once, creating a class which bundles those properties and adding the class with NgClass makes more sense. And just a quick tip, in my opinion, the object literal syntax is better for when you want to set multiple classes or styles in one statement. And the shortcut syntax, such as style.property or class.property, is better for setting a single class or style. That's it for NgStyle and NgClass. In the next lecture, we're going to look at Ng non-bindable.